The council chamber was the largest room Grace had ever seen. It floated in the center of station, a massive space station that served as the meeting place for all the important species in the galaxy. 37 different alien races sent their representatives here to talk, argue, and make deals. Humanity was the member, and Grace had spent 14 years as their ambassador. She stood at her small podium near the back of the room. The placement was not an accident. New species always got the worst spots. The powerful races sat at the front, on raised platforms that let them look down on everyone else. The Dominion had the highest platform of all. Grace wore her best diplomatic uniform. It was dark blue with silver buttons, and she had pinned her credentials around her neck on a thin chain. Those credentials meant everything. They showed she had the right to speak for all of humanity in this chamber. Admiral Samuel stood beside her. He was a tall man with gray hair and a face that showed no emotion. His uniform was white with gold trim, marking him as one of the highest-ranking officers in the human fleet. He had come to support Grace during today's session, though his ships waited in the outer parts of the star system. The High Speaker was talking. His name was difficult for humans to say, so most just called him the High Speaker. He was a strange creature to look at. His body was covered in scales that looked like crystal, and they caught the light in ways that made him seem to glow. He had 6 arms and 3 eyes, and when he spoke, his voice echoed through the chamber in a way that demanded attention. "The humans have made a request," the High Speaker said. His tone made it clear he found this amusing. "They wish to have mining rights to the corridor." Grace kept her face calm. The corridor was a region of space filled with valuable minerals. Humanity needed those resources to keep growing, to keep building ships and colonies. It was a fair request. Other species had received similar rights when they asked. "Perhaps," the High Speaker continued, "the humans could first prove they have evolved beyond throwing stones at each other." Laughter filled the chamber. It came from all directions, from dozens of different species. The sound was not human laughter. It was clicks and whistles and strange vibrations, but the meaning was the same. They were mocking humanity. Grace smiled. She had learned long ago that losing her temper would only make things worse. Humans were from what the galaxy called Earth was considered a dangerous and violent place, full of predators and natural disasters. The other species looked at humans and saw primitive creatures who had somehow stumbled into space travel. For 20 years, humanity had accepted this treatment. They had smiled and bowed their heads. They had signed trade agreements that gave them less than they deserved. They had endured the insults and the laughter because they believed that patience would eventually earn them respect. Grace prepared her response. She would be calm and reasonable. She would point out that humanity had followed all the proper procedures. She would remind the council that cooperation benefited everyone. It was the same speech she had given many times before. She never got the chance to deliver it. The doors at the back of the chamber burst open. A human officer rushed in, moving faster than was considered proper in such a formal setting. Grace recognized him immediately. Commander Cole was young but capable, one of the Admiral's most trusted aides. Crossed the chamber floor in long strides. His face was pale and his eyes were wide. Something was very wrong. He reached Admiral and leaned close, whispering into his ear. Grace watched the Admiral's face as he listened. Samuel was known for his ability to hide his feelings. He had faced enemy ships and hostile aliens without showing any sign of fear or anger. But now something changed in his eyes. The warmth that had been there, the patience that humans were known for, simply vanished. What replaced it was cold and hard and very still. Samuel leaned toward Grace. He spoke 3 words, so quietly that no one else could hear. "Chicago is gone." Grace felt the blood drain from her face. Chicago, one of the largest cities on Earth. Millions of people lived there. Her sister lived there. Her nephew, who was only 8 years old, lived there. How? She whispered back. The Samuel replied. They hit Earth directly. The attack started 2 hours ago. The collective was a small power on the edge of explored space. They had never been friendly toward humanity, but no one had expected them to do something like this. They were not even members of the Council. They were a client state, a minor ally of a larger power. They were clients of the Dominion. Grace looked up at the High Speaker. He was still chuckling at his own joke, enjoying the way the other species had laughed at his words. He had no idea what had just happened. He had no idea that his allies had just killed millions of innocent people. For 14 years, Grace had been the perfect diplomat. She had swallowed her pride more times than she could count. She had smiled when she wanted to scream. She had accepted insults because she believed in a greater purpose. But there were limits. There were lines that should never be crossed, and they had just crossed one. She turned to face the council. The laughter was dying down now, and some of the delegates had noticed the commotion near the human podium. They watched with curiosity, wondering what had happened. High Speaker, Grace said. Her voice was different now. The warmth was gone, replaced by something flat and cold. I have a question for you. The looked at her with mild interest. He was not used to humans speaking out of turn. Did the Dominion authorize the attack on our? Grace asked. The chamber went silent. The other delegates looked confused. They did not know what she was talking about. The High Speaker's crystalline scales shifted colors slightly, a sign of surprise. The act on their own accord, he said dismissively. We do not control every action of our client species, though one cannot blame them for wanting to prune an overly ambitious weed. Some of the delegates laughed again, though the sound was more uncertain this time. Grace stared at him for a long moment. Then, slowly and deliberately, she reached up and removed the diplomatic credentials from around her neck. The thin chain slipped through her fingers, and she set the credentials on the podium in front of her. Admiral, she said quietly, I believe my services are no longer required in this chamber. Samuel nodded once. He understood exactly what she meant. He reached for the communication device on his belt and activated it. All ships this is, he said. His voice carried across the silent chamber. Condition Omega, authorization code Prometheus Rising. Rules of engagement are now unrestricted. The alien delegates looked at each other in confusion. They did not understand what they had just witnessed. They did not know what those words meant. But they would learn. Very soon, they would learn exactly what happened when humanity stopped being polite. The news spread through the human delegation like fire through dry grass. Every officer, every aide, every staff member received the reports within minutes of arrival at the chamber. They read the words on their screens and felt something break inside them. The collective had launched their attack without any warning. Their fleet had taken a long route through empty space, avoiding all the sensor stations and patrol ships that protected human territory. They had bypassed the outer colonies completely. They had not wanted to conquer territory or capture resources. They had wanted to hurt humanity in the worst way possible. Earth was it was where humanity had been born, where their history lived, where billions of people still made their homes, and now a part of it was burning. Chicago was gone. They had used weapons that the Council had banned centuries ago. Plasma bombs that burned so hot they turned buildings into ash and people into shadows on the ground. The attack had lasted only 20 minutes, but in that time, 12 million people had died. 12 million mothers and fathers and children. 12 million dreams and hopes and futures, all destroyed in a flash of terrible light. Captain Lisa Monroe received the transmission aboard her ship, the carrier Relentless. She was a woman in her early 40s with short brown hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. Her crew watched her as she read the reports, waiting to see how she would react. Lisa read the casualty numbers. She saw the images of the crater where a great city had once stood. She looked at the list of known dead, knowing that more names would be added as the hours passed. Her hands did not shake. Her voice did not waver. She simply turned to her second in command and began issuing orders. "Set course for the Helix Nebula," she said. "The fleet is retreating in that direction. We will intercept them." Her executive officer, a young man named Hart, hesitated for just a moment. "Captain, should we wait for orders from command?" Lisa looked at him with eyes that held no warmth, no hesitation, no mercy. "The orders are already given. You heard, Admiral. Rules of engagement are unrestricted." "Understood." Rules of engagement were the guidelines that told military forces what they could and could not do in battle. Normal rules required warnings, required attempts at negotiation, required proportional responses. Unrestricted rules meant none of that applied anymore. Unrestricted rules meant war. Back on station, the council chamber had descended into chaos. Word of the attack had finally reached the other delegations, and now everyone was talking at once. Some species seemed confused. Some seemed worried. A few seemed almost pleased, as if watching a rival stumble brought them satisfaction. The High Speaker called for order. His voice boomed through the chamber, demanding silence. Slowly, the noise died down. "We have received reports of an incident in the Sol system," he announced. "The collective has apparently launched some form of attack against the human." Some form of attack. Grace stood at the edge of the chamber, watching the High Speaker use such casual words to describe the murder of millions. Some form of attack, as if it were nothing more than a minor disagreement. "This council demands an explanation," the High Speaker continued. "The human representative will clarify what is happening and what response they intend to take." Grace did not move. She had removed her credentials. She no longer had the authority to speak for humanity in this chamber. Admiral Samuel stepped forward instead. His white uniform seemed to glow under the lights, and his face was as hard as stone. "The collective attacked our without warning," he said. His voice was calm, but there was something beneath the surface that made several delegates lean back in their seats. "They used banned weapons against a civilian population. Current estimates place the death toll at 12 million, with numbers still rising." The chamber was silent. 12 million was a large number, even by galactic standards. "They are a client state of the Dominion," Samuel continued. "They could not have launched this attack without access to jump gates and intelligence. The High Speaker has already admitted that his government does not control the actions of its clients." The High Speaker's scales shifted color again. "You cannot seriously suggest that the Dominion is responsible for—" "I am not suggesting anything," Samuel interrupted. His voice cut through the chamber like a blade. "I am stating facts. Your clients killed 12 million of our people. Your clients used weapons that this very council banned 300 years ago. Your clients did this while you stood in this chamber and laughed at our request for simple mining rights." The High Speaker drew himself up to his full height. He was taller than any human, and his crystalline body caught the light in ways meant to intimidate. "You forget your place, human. You are a young species. You do not speak to the council in such a manner." Samuel smiled. It was not a friendly smile. It was the smile of someone who had stopped pretending. "For 20 years we smiled while you mocked us," he said. "We accepted unfair terms because we valued peace. We bowed our heads because we believed that cooperation was worth more than pride. We thought that if we were patient, if we were polite, you would eventually see us as equals." He paused, letting his words sink in. "We were wrong." The council delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. This was not how humanity usually spoke. This was not the careful, diplomatic language they had grown accustomed to. "What are you saying?" asked Counselor of the Republic. She was a tall, thin being with luminous eyes and silver skin. Her species had always been neutral toward humanity, neither friendly nor hostile. Samuel turned to face her. I am saying that humanity has tried being polite for 20 years. We have tried being patient. We have tried being reasonable. And in return, your council has treated us like children, us fair treatment, and now stood by while one of your member states murdered millions of our people. He took a step forward, and several delegates actually flinched. That ends today. Humanity is done being polite. We are done being patient. We are done pretending to be less than we are so that you can feel comfortable. You cannot threaten this council, the High Speaker said, but his voice had lost some of its confidence. I am not threatening anyone, Samuel replied. I am simply informing you of the new reality. The collective has declared war on humanity. We will respond accordingly. Any species that chooses to stand with thee or protect them from the consequences of their actions will be considered an enemy of humanity. He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of every delegate. I suggest you all choose your sides carefully. With that, he turned and walked out of the chamber. Grace and Commander Cole followed him, leaving behind a room full of shocked and silent aliens. None of them had ever seen humanity act this way. None of them had imagined it was possible. For 20 years, they had believed that humans were weak, that their politeness was a sign of fear. They were about to discover how wrong they had been. The galaxy had always underestimated humanity. Every species that first encountered humans made the same mistake. They saw a young civilization that had only been traveling among the stars for a few decades. They saw a species that came from a dangerous world but spoke softly and smiled often. They saw ambassadors who apologized too much and generals who preferred negotiation to fighting. They assumed this was weakness. They never considered that it might be something else entirely. Captain Lisa Monroe caught up with the fleet near the Helix Nebula just as she had predicted. Her carrier group consisted of 7 ships, 1 carrier, 2 cruisers, and 4 destroyers. The fleet was larger, with 15 warships and 3 troop transports. On paper, they should have had the advantage. Their ships were newer, their weapons more advanced, their crews more experienced in actual combat. Humanity had not fought a real war since joining the galactic community. The commander, a creature with gray skin and too many teeth, opened a communication channel. He expected the usual human approach. He expected careful words and offers of negotiation. He expected fear. Lisa appeared on his screen. Her face was calm, almost peaceful. She looked at the commander the way a person might look at an insect that had crawled across their desk. "Vessel," she said, "you attacked you killed 12 million of our people. I am giving you one chance to surrender your ships and submit to human justice." The commander laughed. It was an ugly sound. "Human justice? You are outnumbered 2 to 1. Your species has never won a battle against any enemy. Why would we surrender to you?" Lisa nodded slowly as if she had expected this response. "I offered you mercy," she said. "Remember that." She closed the channel and turned to her weapons officer, a young woman named Amy Collins. "All ships, weapons free, target their engines first. I want them unable to run." Amy hesitated for just a moment. "Captain, our orders are unrestricted engagement. Should we attempt to capture any vessels?" Lisa thought about Chicago. She thought about the crater where millions of people had lived and worked and dreamed. She thought about the children who would never grow up, the families that had been erased in a flash of fire. "No," she said, "no prisoners." The battle lasted 11 minutes. They were not prepared for what happened. Their intelligence had told them that human weapons were average at best, that human tactics were predictable, that human crews lacked the killer instinct needed for real combat. Their intelligence was wrong. Lisa's ships moved with a coordination that seemed almost impossible. Her pilots flew patterns that the computers could not predict. Her weapons struck with a precision that left the enemy reeling before they could respond. The first cruiser exploded within 30 seconds. The second followed moments later. The rest of the fleet tried to scatter, to run, to escape the nightmare that was unfolding around them. None of them made it. When the last ship was burning in space, Lisa sat back in her command chair and closed her eyes. Her crew was silent, staring at their screens in disbelief. They had just destroyed an entire fleet without losing a single ship. "Send a message to command," Lisa said quietly. "The attack fleet has been neutralized. No survivors." Across the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out. Human military forces that had been stationed in neutral zones began to move. They did not ask permission from the Council. They did not notify local authorities. They did not explain their actions or apologize for any inconvenience. They simply moved, with a silent efficiency that unnerved every species watching. On station, the Council demanded answers. They sent messages to the human delegation, demanding to know what was happening, demanding that humanity follow proper procedures. Admiral Samuel read their messages and deleted them without response. Counselor of the Republic was one of the few delegates brave enough to approach him directly. She found him in a corridor outside the human quarters, staring out a viewport at the stars. "Admiral," she said carefully, "the Council is deeply concerned about human actions. Several species have reported seeing your warships entering their territory without authorization." Samuel did not look at her. He continued staring at the stars, as if he could see something she could not. "For 20 years," he said, "we followed your rules. We asked permission before we moved our ships. We submitted reports and waited for approval. We did everything your council asked, and in return, you gave us nothing but mockery and unfair treatment." Shifted uncomfortably. "The council does not condone what they did. No one supports the attack on your—" "No one supports it," Samuel repeated. "But no one tried to stop it either. They used jump gates to reach our system. They used weapons that were purchased with credits from banks. Every species in this station knew that they hated us, and none of you said a word." He finally turned to look at her. His eyes were cold and hard, like stones at the bottom of a frozen river. "You let this happen," he said. "All of you. You let it happen because you thought we were weak. You thought we would accept it the way we accepted everything else. You thought we would smile and bow our heads and wait for the council to deliver justice." Took a step back. She had never felt afraid of a human before. She was feeling it now. "What do you want?" she asked. "We want justice," Samuel said. "Real justice, not the empty words your council offers. They will pay for what they did. They will pay for enabling them, and anyone who stands in our way will pay as well." "This is not how civilized species behave," protested. "There are rules, there are procedures." Samuel smiled. It was not a kind smile. "We tried your rules," he said. "Your rules got 12 million of our people killed, so now we are going to try our rules instead." He turned and walked away, leaving standing alone in the corridor. She understood, finally, what the other species had failed to see. Humanity had not been weak. Humanity had been restrained. They had hidden their true nature behind smiles and politeness because they believed in peace. But peace had failed them, and now the galaxy was about to see what humanity looked like when it stopped holding back. The collective ceased to exist within 72 hours. No one had expected it to happen so fast. They were a spacefaring civilization with a population of 8 billion. They had a fleet of warships and an army of soldiers. They had allies and trading partners and defensive agreements with more powerful species. None of it mattered. The human response was not what anyone predicted. Many in the galaxy expected humanity to strike at the same way they had struck at Earth. They expected bombs and fire and millions of dead civilians. That was not what happened. Commander Cole led the ground forces that landed on the capital world. He was young for such an important mission, but Admiral trusted him completely. Had proven himself in a dozen dangerous situations, and he understood what humanity needed to accomplish. His soldiers moved through the cities with cold precision. They did not loot. They did not attack random civilians. They did not burn buildings for the sake of revenge. Instead, they moved with clear purpose. Every military base was captured and dismantled. Every government building was seized and searched. Every factory that produced weapons was taken apart piece by piece. The population watched in confusion. They had been told that humans were barbarians, that the attack on Earth would be answered with terrible vengeance. They had expected their cities to burn. Instead, the humans simply removed everything that made them dangerous. They took their ships. They took their weapons. They took their ability to ever threaten anyone again. Then they left. Stood in the ruins of what had been the High Command. The building was empty now, stripped of everything valuable. Around him, his soldiers were loading equipment onto transport ships. "Commander," said his aide, a young woman named Bate Turner, "the leader is requesting a meeting. He wants to negotiate terms." Considered this for a moment. The leader was a creature called Vax, a politician who had risen to power by promising his people that humanity would be easy prey. Vax had personally ordered the attack on Chicago. "Tell him I have no interest in negotiations," said, "but I will speak with him if he wishes." Vax arrived an hour later, surrounded by what remained of his guards. He was a tall creature with gray skin and eyes that darted nervously in every direction. When he saw, he tried to stand tall to appear strong. "Human commander," Vax said, "this invasion is illegal under council law. You have no right to occupy our world." Looked at him without expression. "You attacked you killed 12 million of our people. You used weapons that the council banned centuries ago." "That was a military action against a legitimate target," Vax protested. "Your cities are military targets because your entire population serves in your reserves." Felt something cold move through his chest. Children are not military targets. Families are not military targets. You killed millions of innocent people because you thought we were too weak to fight back. Vax seemed to shrink slightly. "We were promised protection. They said they would support us if humanity retaliated." "They lied to you," said. "They are not coming to save you. No one is coming to save you. Your species made a choice when you attacked and now you will live with the consequences." He turned to walk away, then paused and looked back. "We are not going to kill your people," he said. "We are not going to occupy your world forever, but you will never threaten anyone again. Your military is gone. Your weapons are gone. Your ability to hurt others has been taken from you." Vax stared at him. "This is worse than death. You have made us helpless." Nodded, yes, that was the point. Back on station, the council finally began to understand what humanity had been hiding. Intelligence reports flooded in from every corner of the galaxy. Species that had thought they understood human capabilities were forced to revise their estimates completely. Human weapons technology was decades ahead of what they had revealed to the Council. Their ships were faster, stronger, and more heavily armed than anyone had known. Their soldiers were trained for conditions that would kill members of most other species. And their fleet was much larger than anyone had imagined. For 20 years, humanity had been building ships in secret, hiding them in remote corners of space, preparing for a day that they had hoped would never come. Counselor read the reports with growing horror. The humans had been restraining themselves all along. Every smile, every bow, every moment of politeness had been a choice. They had hidden their true power because they wanted peace. And now that peace was gone. She approached Grace in the human quarters. The former ambassador was sitting alone, staring at a screen that showed images of the ruins of Chicago. "Ambassador," said, "may I speak with you?" Grace did not look up. "I am no longer the ambassador. I removed my credentials." "Then I will speak to you as one person to another," sat down across from her. What is humanity planning? The Council needs to know. Grace finally raised her eyes. They were red from crying, but there was something hard beneath the grief. "We are planning to ensure this never happens again," she said. "They are finished. They will never threaten anyone again, but they were not acting alone." They said quietly. Though Grace confirmed. They gave the access to their jump gates. They provided intelligence about our defensive positions. They sold them the weapons they used against Chicago. The High Speaker claims they had no involvement. Grace laughed. It was not a happy sound. The High Speaker is a liar. He has always been a liar, and now he is going to discover what happens when you lie to humanity. Felt a chill run down her spine. You are going to war with the Dominion. We are going to hold them accountable, Grace said. Whether that means war depends entirely on them, but I would not recommend they test our patience any further. She turned back to the screen, to the images of her ruined city. We tried being polite, she said quietly. We tried being patient. We tried believing that the galaxy would eventually accept us as equals, and all we got for our trouble was 12 million dead. Her hands clenched into fists. Never again. We will never let this happen again. The war with the Dominion lasted 3 months. It was not the war anyone had expected. The galaxy had seen conflicts between major powers before. They usually dragged on for years or decades, with both sides slowly wearing each other down until someone finally surrendered. This was different. Admiral Samuel did not believe in slow wars. He did not believe in giving enemies time to regroup, time to find allies, time to build new weapons. He believed in striking fast and striking hard, in ending conflicts before they had a chance to become something worse. They had expected humanity to follow the normal patterns of galactic warfare. They expected negotiations and threats and careful positioning. They expected humans to play the game the way everyone else did. Instead, the human fleet appeared in the heart of space without warning. They had used experimental jump drives that no one in the galaxy knew about. One day they were safe behind their defensive lines, and the next day there were human warships in orbit around their most important worlds. Captain Lisa Monroe, now promoted to Admiral, led the main attack force. Her flagship was the carrier Victory, a massive ship that had been built in secret over the past decade. It was larger than anything they had ever constructed, and it carried enough fighters to darken the skies of any world. The High Speaker finally understood the truth. Humanity had not been weak. Humanity had not been primitive. They had simply been waiting, watching, preparing for the day when their patience would no longer be possible. That day had come. The final battle took place above The High Speaker had gathered every ship his dominion possessed, a massive fleet of 300 vessels. They formed a defensive line around their world, determined to stop the human advance at any cost. Lisa looked at the enemy fleet through the viewport of her flagship. 300 ships against her force of 50. By normal standards, this should have crushed her. But these were not normal times. All ships, she said calmly, begin attack pattern Delta, target their command ships first. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it was over, the fleet existed only as burning wreckage drifting through space. Lisa had lost 7 ships. They had lost everything. Admiral arrived 3 days later to deliver the terms of surrender personally. The High Speaker met him in what had been the grandest chamber of the government. It was still impressive, with walls of pure crystal and ceilings that reached toward the heavens. But the power that had once filled this room was gone. The crystalline alien stood before Samuel, and for the first time he seemed small. His scales had lost their glow. His multiple limbs hung at his sides without strength. "What do you want?" the High Speaker asked. His voice was barely a whisper. Samuel looked at him without anger, without hatred, without any emotion at all. "We want several things. First, You will pay reparations for the attack on our. The amount will be determined by a committee that includes representatives from neutral species. The High Speaker nodded weakly. Second, you will release all intelligence regarding your involvement with the attack. Every communication, every order, every credit transfer. The galaxy will know exactly what you did. Another weak nod. Third, your military will be reduced to a fraction of its current size. You will be allowed enough ships to defend your borders, nothing more. The Council will monitor your compliance. The High Speaker looked up at this. You would make us helpless like the... I would make you harmless, Samuel corrected. There is a difference. The chose to attack innocent people. You chose to help them. These were your choices, and now you must live with the consequences. He took a step closer to the crystalline alien. You could have stopped this at any point. You could have warned us about the attack. You could have refused to give them access to your jump gates. You could have chosen peace over profit. His voice hardened. You chose wrong, and now your dominion will spend the next century rebuilding what your arrogance destroyed. 1 year later, Grace returned to the council chamber. She wore her diplomatic credentials again, the same thin chain around her neck. But something was different about her now. She walked with a confidence she had never shown before. Her smile was gone, replaced by an expression that was calm and careful and utterly unreadable. The chamber was full, just as it had been a year ago, but the atmosphere was completely different. No one laughed when she walked to her podium. No one made jokes about primitive species. No one looked at her with anything except respect and fear. Humanity seeks to rejoin the Galactic Council, she announced. Her voice carried across the silent chamber. We still believe in cooperation. We still value peace. We have always valued peace, and we continue to hope that the galaxy can work together for the benefit of all species. She paused, letting her gaze sweep across the assembled delegates. But we will no longer pretend to be less than we are. We will no longer accept unfair treatment to make others comfortable. We will no longer smile while you mock us or bow our heads while you deny us what we have earned. Admiral Lisa Monroe stood beside her, along with Commander Cole and Admiral Samuel. They represented the power that humanity had hidden for so long, the strength that the galaxy had refused to see. We showed you our polite face for 20 years, Grace continued. We did this because we believed that kindness would eventually be returned with kindness. We were wrong. Our kindness was seen as weakness. Our patience was seen as fear. She shook her head slowly. That was a mistake we will not make again. From this day forward, humanity will be a partner in galactic civilization. A full partner, with all the rights and responsibilities that come with that status. We are prepared to share our knowledge, our resources, our protection. We are prepared to work with any species that treats us with respect. Her voice hardened slightly. But we are done being victims. We are done being laughed at. We are done pretending to be something we are not. The galaxy has seen what we are capable of when we stop being polite. Now you will see what we are capable of as equals. The Council voted unanimously to accept humanity back into their ranks. They also voted to restructure the power-sharing agreements that had governed the galaxy for 1,000 years. Humanity was given a seat at the front of the chamber, equal to any other major power. Later, in a quiet room overlooking the stars, Cole asked Grace a question that had been bothering him. Do you think they will ever truly accept us, after everything that happened? Grace considered the question carefully before answering. Through the viewport, she could see human warships patrolling alongside vessels from a dozen other species. A new order was taking shape, one where humanity was no longer the young species begging for scraps. They will learn, she said finally. They have seen what we are capable of when we are pushed too far. They have seen the price of underestimating us, and hopefully they have seen that we prefer peace to war. She turned away from the window. We did not want this. We never wanted this. All we ever wanted was to be treated fairly, to be given the same chances as everyone else. We would have been happy to remain polite forever if they had let us. But they did not let us, said. No, Grace agreed. They did not. And now the galaxy will never forget what happens when humanity stops smiling. Outside, the stars burned in the endless darkness of space. Somewhere out there, new species were being born, new civilizations were rising, new challenges were waiting. And humanity would face them all, as equals among the stars, never again hiding what they truly were.